Let the king of my heart be the mountain where I run, the fountain I drink from. Oh, he is my song. Let the king of my heart be the shadow where I hide, the ransom for my life. Oh, he is my song. 'Cause you are good, good. Oh, 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 let the king of my heart be the wind inside my sails, the anchor in the waves. Oh, he is my song. Let the king of my heart be the fire inside my veins, the echo of my days. Oh, he is my song. You are good, good. Oh, you are good, good. Oh, you are good, good. Oh, you are good, good.
You're never gonna let me down. 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 You're never gonna let me
When the night is holding on to me, God is holding on. And when the night is holding on to me, God is holding on.
Good morning. I'm Pastor Steve Miller. You probably know that by tuning in, but maybe you just stumbled on us. Glad to be here. A lot of times we preach from our sanctuary. We're in the studio today for a lot of reasons. One of them is I didn't get to turn the heat on, so I'm not going in there. But so people do comment when I'm in here instead of in the pulpit. But this is our pulpit today, and we're here to proclaim the word of Jesus. And I appreciate all the people behind the scenes that record this and edit it and make it presentable to you. It really means a lot as we continue to do our best to communicate God's love and God's word to you, whether it be online like this, or if you choose to stop by here in Three Rivers on Buckhorn Road and be with us. You can always visit our website, and as I always say, you call us, we'll be glad to pray with you, minister to you, or give you any information that we can. I want to get right into it today and talk to you about a portion of Scripture that has been really always meant a lot to me, because I haven't always had, well, I haven't ever had a lot of money, but I haven't always been able to give at the level of what man would say what my heart was. I've loved missions. I love Speed the Light, which is our youth ministry and I've always wanted to, even as a teenager, really make a huge impact. And I'd hear about other students and other youth groups that were doing so much more, and I always felt like, wished I could do more. And then I really began to study this passage, and I believe it reveals the heart of God. And it freed me up from a bottom line mentality when it comes to giving, but really more of a heart mentality. It also stands out to me when it comes to valuing people, because if we're not careful, we think some people, based on their talents or their giving or maybe their background, are more valuable than us. I grew up in a church all the way through to my years of going off to seminary, and the Miller kids, the Miller family, we did not make a huge impact when it came to finances, but in fact, my first few years, I didn't know how to act in church. I just ran around probably ticking people off and offending people. I didn't, but my church loved me. My pastor loved me. In fact, that pastor stayed almost 50 years, and he was the pastor that gave me my first opportunity to preach a message. And you'll never forget, Ethan, you'll never forget no, I'm just kidding. The first pastor gives you opportunity to minister. So, because we all have this idea, or we should, if we're healthy in who we are in Christ, that we want to have an impact and make a difference. I think if we're not careful, though, we have the wrong gauge on what that means. We look at people who preach to thousands in churches that are mega churches, and we think they're making an impact, and we don't recognize and realize that we can make an impact. This woman in the story makes an impact, and judged on the amount, bottom line, you wouldn't expect it. But Jesus gives it value. And let me read it to you. Luke 21, it says, "And he looked up and saw the rich putting their gifts into the treasury." That's Luke 21:1. Going on, it says, "And then he saw a certain poor widow putting in 2 mites. So he said, 'Truly I say to you that this poor widow has put in more than all.'" Now wait a minute. I'm just going to stop right now. You can make an argument with that. I mean, how could he say that she put in 2 mites, which is very little, and yet put in more than all the rich people who had given that day? At the where they were gathering, there was 13 offering pots. The scholars tell us, in the traditional sense. So there's 13 offering pots, and so our church, we take up an offering still, and some churches have the offering in the back. But the idea that Jesus, with all these places to give, and he's seeing all these rich people, the Bible says, putting their gifts in, and then he notices this certain poor widow, and she's only putting in 2 mites. Minuscule. Minuscule comparatively, but not to her. So he says, "Truly I say to you, the poor widow has put in more than all. For all of these," now get this, here's the kicker. "For all of these out of their abundance have put their offerings in for God. But she out of her poverty put in all the livelihood that she had." Wow. Does that stand out to you? I hope it does. I mean, look what he's saying. We would if we weren't careful, I don't go over what everybody gives every Sunday in our church. I do know that people are supporting the ministry or not, because if you're going to give direction, if you're going to lead, you have to be, well, I like to say it this way: if you want to drive the bus, you got to put some gas in. And when I mean that, you have to invest in the ministry if you want to lead a ministry. Lillian and I take great privilege. While certainly we have our district offerings, we want to make sure we're also impacting the local church. And I know many of you attend to do that too. And for those of you watching online that have your church, I hope you're investing in the kingdom of God in your own church. So then what did Jesus notice? Certainly the 2 mites, just such a minuscule amount. It wasn't that. I mean, years ago, and I won't tell you where, I was ministering somewhere, and there was a guy, you're not going to believe this, because it sounds so ridiculous. I hope you believe it. Right at offering time, and he sat right in the middle, he would hold up in the air his $20 bill, and hold it up while I was talking about that. And then when the bag came out, he would put in, I'm thinking, wow, this guy really feels like his $20 bill is a lot. And he certainly could have given more than that. So I don't believe she walked up, 1 mite in each hand, clanging them together, trying to get attention. I don't get that sense. I wasn't there, but that's not my sense. Certainly if she'd been inappropriate in any way, Jesus would have noticed that too. But that's not what he said. He wouldn't have used her as an example if she had been a poor example. So she just took, to honor God, all that she had and gave it. And that's what Jesus noticed. So number 1, he noticed her generosity. It stood out. So that's the nice thing about generosity. My staff and a wealthy real millionaire could give the same amount, and some of us would be declared generous, and others of it wouldn't be generosity at all, would it? Because based on what we have, what we give decides whether we're generous. So this woman became so generous because she was all in. She gave it all. She gave all that she had. Getting noticed is important. When I used to try out as a young man, I'm never the tallest guy on the team. But I remember on tryout day, when I was first getting there, whether it was a freshman or trying out for Babe Ruth League or trying out for Little League, I would actually, in the group, and I didn't do it consciously, but people would tell me later, I'd actually get up on my tiptoes like this. I'd start bouncing, and it's embarrassing, just so I'd be noticed. I would want to do something outside of, everybody would stand there to get picked or get put in the game, and so when it was time, they needed a running back, man, I was bouncing up and down. And so I'm so grateful they didn't have iPhones like they do now, because it was kind of embarrassing, but it wasn't conscious. I wanted to make sure I was being seen, and I wasn't, even if I was in the front row. I was told later, even standing in front, I'm jumping up and down like this. Why? I wanted to get in there. I wanted to be noticed. Richard Dobbins taught one of our master's classes, and when I went down and get leadership years ago, and one thing he said that stood out to me, he said, even worse than getting teased, even like having a little, what do you call it, trash talk in the locker room, even worse than getting teased, which, we have to be careful with that. We like to joke around, especially athletics and things, and with your friends you can do that, that's fine, but think about this. He said, even worse than getting teased was going unnoticed or getting ignored. Man. And that's through years. He was a tremendous counselor at Emerge. He listened to a lot of people's hurts, and so that stayed with me. Not to give me an excuse to go around just making fun of everybody for everything. I'm not using them for that. I'm just saying. And I started thinking in my life when I felt devalued and ignored and unnoticed. And I know listen, you're not supposed to want to be the life, the front of everything. You don't have to get all the spotlight or all the attention. If that pendulum swings too far the other way, that's inappropriate too. And we'll talk about pride in the coming weeks and what the Bible says about it. But for now, it's important to recognize what stood out to Jesus wasn't the big amount that the rich put in. He doesn't even tell us what that amount is. It was the small amount, but the generous amount that the widow put in. See, he didn't notice her great amount, he noticed her great sacrifice. That's what stood out. So to a super rich person of the day, they could have 10 times that, 50 times that. But here's what it would have lacked. It would have lacked sacrifice. So what Jesus was really commenting on was the sacrifice, not on the amount. In fact, he goes into the two, they gave out of their richness, they gave out of their wealth, so there's probably a good amount there. She gave out of her poverty. It made a huge impact. Number 2, Jesus noticed the widow's situation. Otherwise, why reference her as a widow? Her situation was, he could have just said someone gave. So he knew she was a woman, and she knew she was a widow. And she knew that so think about this. Why is that important, Steve? Well, here's why it is. A widow in Jesus' day was in big trouble. Unless you had children that could take care of you, unless you had There was no jobs. There was no women's movement of any kind. In fact, I'm just going to tell you something, and it saddens me today, but a widow in Jesus' day was a beggar in most cases. In other words, your income, you had to beg for it. Jobs were scarce, and unless you remarried or unless your children were wealthy, and we know this wasn't the case because if she was a wealthy widow, she wouldn't have been in this story. So she was a beggar. She had to beg. So most likely, the money that she gave was money that she'd received from begging. And this was all the money that she had. Are you hearing the heart of this woman? Are you seeing why Jesus noticed her? She loved the Lord so much that she gave what she had. You know, the Lord doesn't ask to give us what we don't have. That's not, you can't give what you don't have. But He doesn't ask us to make sacrifices we can't make. And this woman said, and I don't believe this woman did this to be noticed because of the way she gave. She just went up and put it in like everybody else. One time I was at a big event, a mega event at a mega church for pastors, and it was a 3-tiered church, and so many people had gotten up and had made pledges and were giving checks, and so they said, they put a table out and they said, come up and to donate toward this ministry, and people were laying their check. So people started throwing their money down, and it raffled down on me. I happened to be right at the edge of the 2-tiered balcony, and people started passing it in, and so I picked up the first 20. It hit me in the shoulder, and there are people that are watching this. I know you know the story because you were there, and all of a sudden everybody gathered at the 2 tiers and started throwing the money down. I know it sounds ridiculous, but it happened. It's exactly the way I'm describing it. And so as the music was playing and people were giving, it was kind of like a season of giving and sacrifice. I had this big wad of cash, and I didn't take the time to stack it into a little thing. So once we started to go up there, they said, bring it up on the stage and give it unto the Lord to keep this ministry going. And huge church, huge ministry, 5,000 pastors there. So I didn't realize it, but the camera was there and they put it up on the screen. And so people were really classy, in a classy way, going up and laying down their check or their money. And so I had mine all bunched up because I had it close to my chest because I didn't even bother to count it. So as I'm walking up the steps, I looked at the screen, and here I am with all this money out, like so for everybody to see. And I'm thinking, oh, this does not look good. I mean, what kind of a person takes out his money and then feathers it all out and holds it against his chest? So when I got up there, I told the pastor, it was a wonderful man of God, I said, this is not my money. I wanted to make sure he knew that I wasn't. And he said, oh, no, I know it isn't. It's our money now, joking around. And he took it and I put it on the table. And I walked down, but I was embarrassed because I thought people would think I was trying to make a big splash out of what I was giving. I was happy to make the contribution, though. See, this widow didn't let her situation. She was happy to make her contribution. She didn't let her poverty or her situation keep her from worshiping. She still wanted to worship. Things weren't good for her. She was struggling probably to eat. Her situation was that of a beggar. But even in her poverty, she decided to worship and to give an offering. What an example. No wonder Jesus noticed her. No wonder this story is in the God. No wonder Luke and I think Mark also makes reference to this. What a powerful example that we're all going to go through hard times this side of heaven. And we're not. You know what? I can look at people. I can look at people that I'm more blessed by than, or look at people that I'm less blessed than. But here's the bottom line: I can't let my financial situation or my lack of material things keep me from worshiping. I need to worship the Lord. He's worthy of my praise. And so I promise you, I say this a lot in America. I say this a lot about America and to my congregation, who I know their situation somewhat, that if they lined up all the people in my church, from the richest person in the world to the poorest who loves Jesus, we'd all be at the front of the line. Every one of us. And I submit to you for your consideration, compared to Christians around the world, you'd probably be toward the front of the line too, don't you think? God's blessed us. Here was a woman that in material things had little, but she came and gave out of her poverty, Jesus said, because she wanted to worship God. Now, if you take from this message that I think the only way to worship God is by giving money, then you're going to miss the message. But this was the example that Jesus gave. With no job opportunities for her, forced to beg, she still decided to worship, and she honored God with her offering. What's your offering today? Are you honoring God with what you have from His blessings to give? The last thing, or the third thing, is Jesus noticed the widow's priorities. See, our priorities reveal our faith. She could have gone to Jesus, walked up and said, hey, I'm really poor, can you bless me? Pray for me, I need money. I don't think in a sense that would be a bad thing. We pray for people in financial straits all the time. But her priority was not to receive at that point. Her priority was to give at that point. And I think that's what stood out to the Lord. That was one of the things. Because, we in church, it's certainly, and I'm looking forward to when we all gather, but it's certainly okay to gather, present your needs, be prayed for. You need a job, you need a raise, you need a promotion. All those things are valid. But at this point, she ignored her need, and her priority was to invest in the kingdom of God. I think often the Lord wants to speak to our hearts about looking at what we don't have and sharing from what we do have. Our time, our talent, and our treasures. It's not just about finances. Here's what I want to say. Isn't it interesting? I have no problem investing in what I believe in. What I mean by that is my time, my talent, my treasures. If I believe in it, I'm more likely to invest. We do, if you look over your life and even your schedule, for the most part, we invest in what we believe in. Now, we don't always get to invest in much as what we believe in, but if you believe in your marriage, you believe in your family, then you'll make an investment. Sometimes we fall short of what we'd like to do because interruptions. But let me say this: when we really start investing time, talent, and treasure, we do it what we believe in. And what this woman was saying, she believed in God, so she took the only thing she had and said, I want to give it to the Lord. I want to give it to the kingdom. Matthew 6:21 says it this way, for where your treasure is, your heart will be also. And so she put, or you could switch it and say where your heart is, that's where your treasure is too, because that's usually what happens. But she certainly made an impact on the offering that day and was highlighted by the Lord. This widow was left with nothing after she gave, but she became something in Jesus' eyes. You may feel like, compared to others, you're not much. You might feel like that you've been devalued. Maybe you've made some poor choices. Perhaps you're in a begging situation where you're not doing real well in so many ways. But I want you to know something. You are valued by the Lord. God loves you. He's not left you. He's not forsaken you. And if this woman can rise above her situation and worship God, I'm challenging you, with the help of the Holy Spirit this morning, to do the same thing. Worship the Lord. Worship Him. Love Him. He loves you so much. More than any person that you could hug today, that you could see today. I know we're not hugging much, but and you may not feel, you might feel love, but you might not feel you have much to contribute. You do. This woman could have given 30 reasons why she shouldn't get into that offering line. But she wasn't going to let those things stop her. She wanted to make an impact. She wanted to have show the Lord that she loved Him and worshipped Him. And giving is part of our worship. It's part of our worship. She became something in God's eye because He noticed her sacrifice. And I want you to know something. Jesus notices your sacrifice too. If you're making a sacrifice of time, talent, and treasure, God sees it. It's easy sometimes to use, the dollar amount because we can't number people, but it goes so far beyond that. Hebrews says God will not forget your labor of love. There's so many different ways that we can worship the Lord with our choices and our lifestyle and what we invest our time in. I wonder what He thinks about it. I'm not going to clothesline preach as I close today, but if we spend hours on Facebook or hours on Netflix and a short time with Him, what was our offering that day? And again, I'm not picking on those things. I'm just saying that we have opportunities. You don't have to have a lot of money to make sure that you're noticed by Jesus. It's not that way. It's your choices. It's your priorities. He also notices our service. A lot of people, I love this church where I get to pastor. People contribute their time in so many different ways. And I'm grateful. And I tell our staff, don't just do, and I tell myself too, don't just do what you're paid for. We want to do stuff color outside our lines of responsibility. Why? Because we want to be people of service too. We want to go outside that. And then He notices our spirit of generosity. I'm so glad that generosity is defined by Him and not by some, like I said, I could give a certain dollar amount and it wouldn't even be generous, and someone else could come in and give half that and Jesus would notice their generosity. So God knows our heart when we give. So don't worry about the numbers. Ask God to speak to your heart. Are you generous? when it comes to your time, your talent, your treasure? Are you willing to worship God? There's so many excuses. I told our staff a couple weeks ago, well, we sure didn't need an ice storm during COVID. I mean, there's enough reasons for people to stay home from church. And it's not, I know you can have church in your kitchen and all. Like I said, I'm not closed on it. I'm just trying to, the Holy Spirit's stirring my heart to challenge you in this area. You want to be noticed by Jesus? Follow the course of the widow. Don't let anything stop you from worshiping. Don't let anything stop you from being generous. Don't let anything stop you. And don't make it about you. Like I said, she didn't wave those coins around and say, hey, Jesus, that's all I got, and throw it in. In fact, the Bible doesn't record her even saying a word. You see, we don't give to get noticed. We don't sacrifice to get noticed. We get noticed because we sacrifice. And you know what? Not always this side of heaven. I'm not talking about being noticed by your pastor or the friends in church. I'm talking about getting noticed by God. We can bless the Lord with our generosity. We can bless the Lord with our worship. Would you do that today? Search your heart. Allow the Holy Spirit to speak to you. Anyway, I don't want to be, look, I'm probably never going to be wealthy. I'm probably never going to be wealthy. I mean, I'm on the back end here. But I also don't want to ever be stingy. Are you hearing what I'm saying? So you can be wealthy and be stingy, and you can be middle class and be stingy. And according to Jesus, you can be poor and be stingy. So maybe you'll never be a millionaire, maybe you'll never be rich. Let's not be stingy. Let's be givers. If you will be givers, you'll be blessed. Why can you say that, Steve? Because that's what Jesus said. Would you pray with me? Thank you, Lord, for this model of generosity. This person that was unnoticed by, what occurs to me, Lord, as I pray, maybe she was unnoticed by everybody else worshiping that day. But she caught Jesus' eye. Thank you, Lord, that you don't refuse to notice any of us. Every one of us has value. And I pray for that person today listening who feels like nobody cares. Nobody will even notice them if they just disappeared. But Lord, you notice them. And you love them. And we receive your love and forgiveness by grace today. In your precious name. Amen. Thank you for tuning in this morning. I pray, Lord, a blessing upon every one of you. As I said before, do not hesitate to go on our webpage, newhopetr.com. It's been a while since I've been on it, and contact us or call us at the church here in Three Rivers, New Hope Assembly of God. We would love to minister to you. We love you. God bless you.